Hey, welcome back to my channel where I'm building a RANS S21. Just a quick reminder, none of my videos are instructional. I'm a first-time builder and I'm just documenting my build, of which some people might have some interest in. This is the second episode in doing the engine cowling. I thought it was going to be a 2-episode series, but it looks like we'll need to do 3. It's fairly time-consuming, the amount of time taking the cowl off, trimming, buffing, sanding, putting the cowl back on, measuring, taking the cowl off, trimming, sanding. It's just very time-consuming. I'll summarize my hours at the end of the video. But in the first video of this series, we worked on getting the 2 pieces of the cowl mounted to the plane, trimming it and fitting it in a way so that it's where you want it, and then securing it to the plane. In this episode, we'll spend more time with the final trim and getting the attachment hardware on to attach it. So with that, let's just jump into working on the cowling. It looks like our next step is to put both sections of the cowling back on and pin it with the clecos that we've got. And then we're going to locate the aft holes, which are specific inches from each other and specific positions. And we're going to drill to a 40 and cleco all the way around the aft. So it looks like the holes along here are going to be 1/2 inch up from where this meets the 2 cowlings. But you haven't trimmed this yet, so it's hanging down here. So I'm going to determine where the 2 would meet. And then this is 1/2 inch up. And then this looks like this one's 1/2 inch below, because there's a 1 inch gap here. We're just doing the aft holes right now. So if I get these 2 figured out, I'm going to follow that route. I've got the aft clecos in all the way down around. These were 4 inches, nothing on the corner. This was the 1 inch between the joggle, and then these are 4.5 inches, but everything seems to fit, and I've got the clecos in. I'm going to deviate from the instructions a little bit just because it seems to be common sense. In between these 2 clecos, this is where the joggle is. This is where the upper cowl is going to basically fit into the lower cowl. They say tape 1.5 inches down from the joggle on the lower cowl, and then you're going to put the upper cowl on and measure the 1.5 inches up from the line, and that tells you where to cut to fit into the joggle. The problem is if I go 1.5 inches down, I'm still on this underneath this upper cowling. So when I put the upper cowling on to measure, the tape will be covered. So I put the tape 3 inches down. Here's the edge of the upper cowling here. So I'm going to measure 3 inches down, put the top cowl back on, and then draw my line 3 inches up. And again, it's the same principle, and it should put it right along the joggle line. But 1.5 inches won't work unless I cut away a piece first, tape, and then cut a second time. And I don't want to cut twice, so I think this makes sense. This is the first fitting after the cut. It comes right into the joggle here, but I've got just a slight bit too much material here, so I've marked what I need to trim on this side. And on this side, I would have liked just a little bit more material. It's got a little gap, but if I close it with my fingers like this, I can close it up. So when I put my nut screws in, I'll make sure that this is closed tight, so that'll hold tight together. So I'm happy with this side. I'll sand both. I'm going to trim the other side and then sand them both to see if I can even the line out. I've taken off, trimmed, and replaced this top cowl, I don't know, 10, 15 times, taking little bits off here and little bits off here and trying to get it to fit. And at this point, I just have this little overhang here, but I can't figure out what I would shave to change it and to fit it. And believe it or not, it's the same on this side. There's just a little bit of an overhang, maybe 1/8 of an inch. And I hate to say it's good enough, but I think if I trim any more in places that I might think might help it, I'm going to create gaps in my seams. You can't put material back, obviously. So I think I'm going to move on, and the next step is to mark and set your nut screws. And I'm just going to have to say good enough and hope the Oshkosh Lindy judges don't notice that. I'm kidding. I'm not going to enter it in any builders contest. I'm just excited that I can get a bird flying. The next step was to mark and drill in Cleco with 40s. These are 4 5/8 inches apart. These two come in. It's a 5/8 inch back, 3/4 inch spacing between them, and the 1/2 inch up, and the same around the other side. I did notice as I was pushing down, the manual says this has to get trimmed as you fit. It had to get trimmed a little bit more to fit in here kind of snug. So you just keep taking it off and trimming it and marking it. So that's the next step. I just watched Derek Kenny's video on this part of the cowling. He's clearly a better builder than I am, and it's just more precise, more patient, and he does a really nice job. So take a look at his video series. Two things I noticed that he did is where I had this little lip right here that I said, well, I'm just going to have to live with it. He spent the time where he sanded the material here and on the inside here. So he sanded the outside material and the inside, and that enabled him to push this whole thing back a little this way, which meant his trim was a little bit different. But he did this all before he set that center Cleco, which sets your distance. And that enabled him to get rid of this little overhang. He had the same problem where I couldn't figure it out. He did. The other thing is with my spinner on, I've got a little bit of a ridge here. Now this is probably, he mentions that the motor's probably going to settle a little on the mounts after you run it, which is going to leave a little bit of drag here. His top cowl piece is pretty flush with the top of his spinner. And again, that's before you set your center point. Cut your material to bring it down a little more flush. So I really like how clean his cowl is, and this is already set. So that's something I'm gonna have to live with, and hopefully that's not going to be too much drag and affect my flight characteristics much. The next step is to transfer drill all the holes to a number 11. And eventually these holes here get stepped out to even larger than an 11, except these two and this one and the one underneath remain a number 11 because they're going to take a panhead bolt rather than the quarter turns that these take. But right now they all go to a number 11 for the next step. In starting to attach the cowling, you get your parts and hardware. You've got a bunch of these different turn studs at different sizes. There's like 5 of them. And then some miscellaneous hardware. And the first step, it says, I'm skipping the oil door because I'm assuming that can be done at any time. I'll do that a little bit later. I'm going to kind of follow a modification on that. But the first thing is position the nut plates to the number 11 holes. Now you only have eight nut plates. And that's because you've got the 3 each up front on either side, and then 1 each on either side at the bottom aft side of the cowl. And remember, that's where those panhead bolts go, and everything else is going to get a quarter turn stud. So it says to start with these 2 back here, line up the nut plates and get those attached. If you've gotten this far in the build, you have set a lot of nut plates. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the detail as far as putting the nut plates in on the strips and then again on the forward cowl section. After you get the ones done on the boot cowl strip, you get the 6, 2 and 1 on this side, 2 and 1 on the other side of the nut plates into the lower cowl. Okay, these 6 are done. I did countersink them just a little bit to make that flush. The manual says it's optional, but it seems if that's a touch point to make them flush. The only caution I would say is you've got some curvature right here. So as you put these in, you balance. If you come down too far this way, you get this one too close. So if you go up too far, the rib nut ends up, or the nut plate ends up kind of on the curve and not flush. So it's just common sense when you put them in and to have them flush on the backside. The receptacle holes get drilled out to a 5/16, and the turnbuckle holes get drilled out or stepped up to 1/4. These are the receptacles, kind of odd looking things. So one warning I would have is I'm drilling out my holes along here to the 5/16 for the receptacle, and that's a little closer to the edge than I would like. So when you measure that 1/2 inch, if you haven't done this already, it's really, to move this here is like a 3/8 of an inch, not half, but this is solid material. I would just prefer to have it about 1/8 of an inch more in towards the joggle. But these all get drilled out to the 5/16, and then 1/4 on the side that's going to take the turnbuckle. I wanted to get one done so I understood how the whole thing goes together. You drill this inside hole out to 5/16, and then put the receptacle in there with the typical small rivets. Then the outer hole gets drilled to 1/4, and then these turnbuckles go in, but there's all different sizes, and there's no instructions. I guess I tried putting one at 220 or 200, and it wouldn't latch. So this is a 240. It's got thicker material here than up here, and this one goes in kind of snug. I didn't put a 260 in to see if it was loose, but I'm guessing if this is snug, this is how you determine the size. Getting that little clip on the back is a pain in the butt. I lost one of the washers. Hopefully they give you a couple extra. Otherwise, it's on the floor somewhere, and I just couldn't find it. So I did put a big piece of cardboard down to hopefully catch it next time I put it on. But that, I guess, is the process all the way around on where the cowling connects to the strap. So picking out these 1/4 turn buckles is interesting. They give you different lengths. They got 260, 240, 220, 200, and sometimes you put them in and they don't click, they're too short. Sometimes you put them in, they're a little bit loose and they're too long. So trying to determine, they all seem to be going through one layer of material. I know on the cowling, this area was a little bit thicker, but a 220 worked here. And then I've been putting 200s down here, but just because that seems to be what fits. There's no rhyme or reason. Now these up here are coming along the edge, are going to go through this cowling, the other cowling. Oh, and that's it. There's no material along here, just the two cowlings, but these are both pretty thin. So I don't know. It's trial and error as I go through. And these things are hard shit to put on. You put the little rubber gasket on. You put this invisible ring on. These things, I've lost them right here on the table. They come out. You can't even see them. They're like translucent. And then getting this stupid clip on, there's got to be a trick to it, but it's hard. I struggle with each one. I kind of rip my fingers up putting each one on. So it's going to be a guessing game when I get to the end. I can't imagine what I'm going to use these 260s for. It seems to be the 200s are real popular. I've only got 4 180s, so there must be some real thin things somewhere. I don't know where I'm going to use those. But at the end, I think some other builders have said that at the end they never have the right number of the right sizes, and they have to order additional ones. So we'll see where that goes. But this is just a matter of drilling out these holes to 1/4. No, these are the 5/16, and the others are 1/4, and then finding the right, put the lock nut in, the rib nut, the lock nut, screw nut. Oh, what the hell are they? So here's an example of what I'm talking about. I'm going to do this with one hand, I think. This is a 200 down here, and it just turns in nice and tight. It goes in. There's no play. But this 220 I put up here, it's not going to lock in. It's loose, so it's not too long. But now it's not long enough to get in there and grab. So this was a 220. I'm going to now put a 240 in and see if that works. But it's just I think it's just trial and error. There's no chart that says this is what you ought to be using that I know of. Well, I asked where I would use the 260. That's a 260. Went in there nicely. The 240 wouldn't close. The 260 worked just fine. I think that's because the material here is a little thicker before it goes into the joggle. So there, I used up one of my 260s. I'll pass on one trick that seems to work is when you're setting the screws for the first time and determining the length, you can set them in and test them before you put that backing nut on. That makes it easier if you have to take them off, put them on to change sizes. That little ring in the back's a pain in the neck. But this way I sized them, found the right size, and now I'll take them off and put the ring on the back. So that seems to be a little bit faster than my other way. I'm back under my plane looking up at the bottom. And remember, this is a nut screw, not a quarter turn buckle. And I've got a little bulge here. And that's just part of when I fit it, it didn't fit perfectly. I think I'm going to put another nut screw right here. If I put a second one in, I don't like the pressure on this one. And I think it'll give me a little tighter fit and a little more security. So I'm going to stick a second nut screw, not a quarter turn, but a second nut screw right here. So there's two, and that'll push that up and hold it tight. And I still have a little gap, but not much. And it's under the plane. It's with the flow of the air, so I'm not going to worry about it. The aft part of the lower cowling is done. All the turnbuckles are in. Now I'm going to work on the top cowling. I put a little piece of cardboard in there to kind of catch all the drill bits so they don't go down into the engine. And I think I'll start from the middle and work out. And then I'll work on the cowling attachments after I have it done up top first. Well, that's a good place to cut it off. That segment of the build took 15.9 hours. That brings my build to date to 1,390.1 hours. I have finished the cowling, so in the next, I've got the content for the next episode. I'll get that out shortly. And in that episode, I finish up with the attachments and get the oil door installed. And that wraps up the cowling. So if you're building, good luck. Thanks for watching. And remember, dream it, just build it.